Hi, I'm Daniel Ratner, and I'm standing next to one of the most 90s cars of all time. This is my 1996 Geo Tracker, and it gets a lot of attention, mostly from people wondering what it even is. I bought it just over a year ago looking like this, and since then I've done a lot of work to it. Today I want to give you guys a tour of my car, talk about some of the work I've done, as well as talk about the Geo brand and its history. Let's get into it. In the late 1980s, General Motors partnered with Japanese automakers to bring affordable and reliable cars to the US under the Geo name. Between 1989 and 1997, 5 different models were released, including the Geo Metro, the Geo Prism, and the Geo Tracker. The Geo Tracker is based off of the Suzuki Sidekick, and therefore some enthusiasts call this car the Sidetrack. The predecessor to this car was the Suzuki Samurai, a popular off-roader car in the 80s with a cult-like following. I'm going to start the tour off in the front, where you can see this is in fact a small car. If I were to hold out my arms, my wingspan stretches well beyond the width of this vehicle. This car is only 64 inches wide, which to put into perspective, the first generation Mazda Miata is 65.9 inches wide. This car is also 144 inches long. Taking a closer look at the grille of this car, you can see the Geo logo, which features the Chevy symbol surrounded by a globe, suggesting the global nature of this car. Underneath is a tow setup. Being a small off-road vehicle, many of these were used as tow cars behind RVs in the 90s and early 2000s. The first 100,000 miles of this car were towed behind an RV as well. I want to show you guys under the hood, but first I want to point out that the popper is actually located in the glove box and not under the driver's side dash like in most vehicles. The first time I went to work on this car, that really tripped me up. Now, as far as engines go, we only had one option in the US, a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine. Early models were single overhead cam and made just 80 horsepower, but this one has the upgraded 16-valve engine that makes a whopping 96 horsepower. While that might seem like a lot, this car only weighs 2,500 pounds. One other thing to note is that the Samurai only had a 1.3 liter engine, and so a popular upgrade for those cars is swapping in the 16-valve engine from this car. Continuing on to the outside of the car, it can be kind of difficult to tell what's original and what's not. One thing I did change were these wheels, which actually came off of a Suzuki Samurai. Looking closer in the wheel caps, you can see the Geo logo in this cool 90s blue font. Another change that was done by a previous owner is the Safari decal, which looks so original to the car, people often think it's a trim level. Another thing I changed is this aftermarket top made by Best Top. The original top had a squared off Jeep-like look to it, but this one has more of a truck, beachy aesthetic. One thing that is original to this car is this rare two-tone paint, which supposedly helps protect from rock chips. Next up in the rear, you can see I added this aftermarket tow hitch. Even though this car only has a 500-pound tow capacity, I mainly just wanted to be able to add this back-off receiver protector. I also added this backup camera, even though this car is small and it doesn't really need it. Opening up the tailgate, you can see it reveals a pretty small storage area. However, the seats can be folded down to give more space, which I'll now demonstrate. All you need to do is fold down the rear seat, pull on this handle, put down this lever, and now you have double the storage area. There are two options for transmissions, one being the automatic and the other being the 5-speed manual. You also have the choice between rear-wheel drive, which this car features, or the 4x4. One thing I want to reiterate is that these cars were made to be as cheap as possible, and the interior of this car really reflects that. The door panels are pretty basic, featuring an armrest, a small storage cubby, manual locks, and roll-up windows. Power windows were not an option. One thing that I want to point out is despite being 6'1", I fit in this small car perfectly. The interior of the car continues its 90s theme, with these funky patterned blue seats and the gray plastic center console. The rear seats also feature the cool blue pattern. The seats easily fold and slide forward to allow for rear passengers to enter. Underneath are parts for a jack as well as a subwoofer I added. The seats also feature a nice little storage cubby. The passenger side is similar, except it has a pull tab for rear passengers to exit themselves. It also contains the jack. Now, one downside to this aftermarket top is that it really restricts how much room the rear passengers have. Now, unfortunately, the process of removing this aftermarket top isn't that easy, but it's still better than the original top. I'll demonstrate now. All you have to do is pull on these pull tabs and work your way around the perimeter. In the center, there's some Velcro, which comes off, and eventually you can pull off the entire top. Now with the top removed, you can see the rails which would have been for the original factory top. This wind deflector portion is also removable in the same way, but I'm not going to mess with that right now because it's really annoying to put back on. Now with the back of the top open, you can see where the passengers will get some sun, and there's still a good amount of storage space behind them. I could also finally demonstrate what it looks like getting in the rear. Now, despite what it would look like, there's actually a decent amount of sitting room in the back. I have the seat in front of me sitting about where it would be for a regular person my height, and I have plenty of room for my knees. There's also some cool features such as seat belts, and there's even a little ashtray. The steering wheel again features the Geo badge with the Chevy symbol in the middle. And this is from a time before they figured out how to put the horn in the actual airbag, and so instead you have these buttons which sound the really wimpy sounding horn. The steering column stalks are standard with the turn signals to the left and the wipers to the right. There's also a hazard button in the middle. The steering column also lacks any adjustment or controls, so you're pretty much stuck in this position. To the left of the steering wheel is a row of blank switches, with the only exception being the illumination control. Most of these switches were used in the 4-door model. The right side is also blank, with the exception being this button I added to activate the backup camera. The gauge panel is super basic, featuring just your engine temperature, a tachometer, your fuel level, and one of the slowest speedometers I've ever seen, going just up to 85 miles per hour. And trust me, anything going above 60 feels like the car is going to shake itself apart. There's a small vent to the left, 2 in the middle, and 1 small one for the passenger on the right. I also wanted to show off this turntable air freshener I added. The climate controller levers with nice tactile feel to them. You really feel like you're doing something when you move them. One thing it is missing is the AC button, but this does have the 250 AC, 2 windows down going 50 miles an hour. I did change out the stereo to this touchscreen one, which features Apple CarPlay and allows me to have my backup camera. Beneath the stereo is a 12-volt outlet as well as this removable ashtray. Beneath that is the 5-speed manual with a small storage area and slots for your coins. This is where the 4x4 selector would be, but being a 2-wheel drive, this features another storage cubby. Going lower, you have 2 cup holders as well as a small cubby area that always seems to break, but I managed to fix with some duct tape. The glove box is pretty small, but has a decent amount of storage space with enough room for the owner's manual. It also has some service parts IDs, as well as the engine designation and the paint code. The owner's manual has a really 90s graphic to it, and I even have the business card of the original salesperson. You can see it was sold alongside Chevrolet in the South County Chevy Geo dealership. Inside is the warranty information, Chevy's roadside assistance program, as well as your tire policy. Another cost-saving feature could be found up top, where neither driver nor passenger side sun visors have mirrors. One feature I added were these map lights, which were a rare factory option and are definitely needed, as your only other was the small dome light. The top operation is super simple. All you do is fold down these sun visors, push these buttons to unleash the latches, and then push open the top while folding back the material. And it's that simple. And putting the top back up is just the same thing in reverse. Now with the sun setting and the top back up, I'm going to hop inside and show you guys what it's like to drive this car. Alright, so driving the 1996 Geo Tracker. Usually I have the top off and the windows down, but for now I'm going to leave the top on as I'm kind of worried about the road noise. One thing to note about this car is that there's definitely a lot of noises and creaks and rattles. Like I mentioned, it's a cheap car. It's also kind of like the off-roader car, so it's definitely not refined in any way. And every bump, every, rock and everything, you really hear it and you really feel it. Overall, though, I would say this car is super peppy. It's kind of surprising for most people because it's such a small engine and, it only makes 96 horsepower. But for a car this small, it's really more than enough. And it has a lot of good pickup. It's not going to be going fast by any means. As I mentioned, the top speed is like 85 according to the speedometer, and I wouldn't even want to go that fast. But for just going around town, it has plenty of speed. So I haven't really taken it off-road at all. I know that's sort of the point of these cars, is to be off-roaders and to, take them on the trails and whatnot. But this car being a 2-wheel drive and it's really my daily driver, I just prefer to kind of take it easy and to just cruise around, take the top off and enjoy it. I've owned a lot of different cars since I moved to California, and this one by far gets me the most attention. I always have people waving and smiling to me in it, and people are always pointing it out, I see, and asking what is it. And just in general, it's like a good chick magnet car. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I put a lot of effort into it, and I would appreciate any likes or comments that you may have. and please consider following as I'll be posting more videos of this kind in the future.